Welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'll be covering every studio song the band has recorded and every bonus track that I can find. Each week we'll go over a new song from the beginning to where they are currently, and as they keep adding albums, I'll keep adding shows. Let the deep dive party begin.
In the magic garden, some were singing, some were dancing.
Hello and welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. It is a new year, a new season, a new album, new artwork to discuss. Lots going on. So welcome to the show. Thank you guys for joining me for this very special episode of a very classic Uriah Heep song, The Wizard. And, of course, this is a fan-based podcast, which is endorsed by the band. And we're going to dig into this song. But first, of course, it is the first show of the week. So we have some things to talk about before we get to this wonderful music. First of all, I want to thank our patrons at the Patreon account that you can find on the website, scotthaskin.com, and then click the Uriah Heep podcast link. Down at the bottom, we have the link to the Patreon. And we have some people that are very kind in donating there. At the $3 mark, we have Peter Voss, Goran Eriksson, and Frank Thielgaard Mortensen. Thank you, gentlemen. And at the $1 tier, we have the suffocating Airtight Gravesite. It's got to be hard to breathe in there, right? So thank you all very much. That helps me quite a bit with the show, helps me cover the expenses and keep things going. I've actually picked up almost all of the deluxe version CDs now. I think there's 3 I still don't have. They haven't all arrived yet. I've got some in order, but I've got almost all of them now, which means that's everything that I'll need to do the show, which is great. Also, I want to send a shout out to everyone who has left us reviews on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Podbean. All those places are very, very helpful. And I know there may be places that you guys are leaving reviews that I don't see. Those are the main places that I'm able to view them. So thank you very much. And for those who continue to do that, I really appreciate it. My graphic artist for the podcast, Scott Lazinski, did a great job on the logo. Still love looking at that. And I'm blown away with how quickly he got that done. And he's a professional. That's what he does. But it's still amazing to me that somebody can come up with a concept and do it in that great detail so quickly. Of course, I will not do a podcast without Instant Dialogue Cleaner, or IDC. A wonderful program by my friends over at Audionamics who just continue to baffle me with their technological amazement. It's such a simple interface on the surface, but what's going on in the algorithms behind it is just a sea of insanity, I'm sure. So hopefully those of you that took advantage of the Christmas sale have had a chance to work with it. A lot of times I get stuff when there's sales on and I don't work with it for months and I completely forget about it. And then I'm like, hey, what's this thing? So hopefully you guys have had a chance to work it out. If you're curious about it, there is a demo version, I believe, that you can download and kind of see how it can help your dialogue get cleaned up. Basically, I use it to filter out, the computer tower fans, the airport that I live right near. Sometimes there's some other noises in the close proximity, and this does a great job just whisking that right out. Also, my friend Dave White, he is Uriah Heep's director of social media. He shares every time I put out the show, he shares that on Twitter and on the Uriah Heep Facebook group. And he's a really, really great guy too. And I really appreciate him doing that. And, Ace has been a huge help with getting the show off the ground. He is the manager of Uriah Heep. And he also has a show called Ace on Music that you can find on YouTube and Stitcher. And it's really, really cool. He's such a knowledgeable and articulate guy. He also has like a really good voice for announcements and radio and stuff like that. So it's a really enjoyable show to listen to. His companions are very intelligent and knowledgeable as well. So go ahead and check that out and enjoy, because it's really good stuff. I have to mention my brothers at the Deep Dive Podcast Network. In no particular order, but always first is Nate and John at the Deep Purple Podcast. Simple Man at Skinnerd Reconsidered Podcast, which is a Leonard Skinnerd-based podcast. Terry T-Bone Mathley at T-Bone's Prime Cuts, whose show, The Other Side, will be coming out on the 5th. I'm very excited about that. I'll have that link for you in tomorrow's episode. And then, of course, Rye at Sabbath Bloody Podcast, the Black Sabbath podcast that has now surpassed all the Black Sabbath music and is doing the music of Ozzy Osbourne. And then Paul, Joe, and David at the Lap of the Pods, the Queen podcast. Really great guys and a great show. I knew next to nothing about Queen, and I've learned quite a bit from each of the shows that I've had a chance to listen to. And it's great to see people that are so passionate about their bands or members of the bands or particular songs, and just hear them really talk about what the songs mean to them. I get a lot of people writing to me saying that they appreciate that I do that, and I appreciate that they write into me to tell me that they appreciate that I do that. Also another cool place to check out is gottahear'emall.com, where you can get historic concert information about the bands Deep Purple and Emerson, Lake and Palmer / Emerson, Lake and Powell. Really cool stuff, very detailed, very well organized. My friend Allegra over there, she just does an amazing job. So check her out. You can also find her on Twitter as well at, I think it's at Gotta Hear 'Em All. And really, really cool stuff that she's got, just very detailed and well-researched stuff. So check that out. And now, we have to talk a little bit about this album before we start talking about the individual songs. Obviously, this is a very popular and well-known album. It seems to be the first album that a lot of people hear when they think about, what got them into Uriah Heep. A lot of times it might have been The Wizard or Easy Livin', or it just happened to be the first album that they heard because so many other people were listening to it, and they were exposed to it and they checked it out. The artwork, honestly, on this is one of not just, I think, Heap's best album covers, but I honestly think one of the best album covers ever for me. And whenever somebody says, what are your favorite album covers? This is one of the first ones that comes to mind every time. And it was a piece of artwork that was done by a man named Roger Dean. Beautiful concept, beautiful illustration. I love the fact that it's kind of cartoonish, right? It's not like it's actual figures, not like Magician's Birthday, where you've got characters that are very clear and identified. Like the wizard's kind of fuzzy and in the background, and it's just a really cool landscape, a really cool idea of a world that I would love to just step into and check out. Find out what's going on in there. That it really draws me in, and I think that was certainly a help to getting there some attention to the album and to the band. But, the music itself within the album very much holds up. It's not like the album cover sells it and people were like, well, the cover was great and the music isn't that great, because it is. I mean, there is not, as far as I'm concerned, a filler track on this album. And a couple of great bonus tracks that we're going to hit towards the end. One of my favorites, actually, is called Home Again to You. And this is actually the third time I've bought Demons and Wizards. I had the actual LP back in the 80s, and then I got the CD. There was I don't remember, I think it was an extended edition CD, and it had Home Again to You and Why on it. And then this deluxe edition that I just bought has another song on it, and it's really interesting too. So lots of cool stuff, but I actually like the mix of Home Again to You on the last version I had. So that's actually the one that I'm going to be going off of, because it's a little more clear to hear. And so that's the one time I'm actually diving back into a different CD other than the deluxe series to do a review of a song. Pretty interesting stuff, but it's a great album. I have a lot of great personal connection with this one. I had heard this album shortly before I had to go into the hospital, and I had a little, like a Sony cassette player, those little ones that you could just loop through your belt or whatever. And I had a notebook, and I had listened to the songs. I was trying to figure out all the words and write them down. And Poet's Justice was the first song that I really, really connected with. I loved that. I had just started reading Stephen King at the time. Well, actually, it was Richard Bachman. It was Thinner was the first book I was reading. And I did that in the same hospital trip. But it was a great sense of comfort to me. And I really loved digging into the songs and really learning them. And that was in the late fall, early winter, somewhere in there. And of course, then it became a Christmas album because it was something I was listening to a lot, through that Christmas season. And just a lot of great memories associated with it. And, the songs are fantastic. The performances are amazing. And it's just, for me, one of my favorites. And I'm really happy to share it with you. I'm sure that a lot of you guys, it's your favorite for a lot of your own personal reasons. But that's the beauty of music, is that it can be anything as long as you connect with the song, whatever your association is, whether it's a hot summer day, a cold winter's night, a holiday, a sad time, a happy time, whatever it is. Like, it's so personal what these things mean to us and how they manifest. But at the same time, what we all share is the enjoyment of the songs and the performances and the writing and the construction and all of that sort of thing. But also, on this particular album, I think that the mix is really, really great. And it certainly is a character. The songs are all very cohesive. It sounds like they were recorded at the same time. It sounds like they were mixed at the same time, went through the same mastering process together. It's a very tight album as far as the sound goes, very evenly mixed from song to song. I haven't listened through all of the deluxe version yet, but what I have heard was very consistent with the original LP that I had. So it's very warm and comfortable to me. Obviously, there's none of those little pops and clicks that we had on the LPs. I didn't have to put a penny down on a needle to listen to the album without it skipping, but those were the pains of the old days. But no, it's got a great mix to it. Very much a character of the album and the songs themselves, and really, really ties the whole thing together very nicely. The bonus tracks, I like them, but I can certainly see why they weren't included, because even though it's not really a concept album, it kind of is. It's a lot of fantasy type stuff, and the album cover is very fantasy. But not everything is. Like, All My Life is not a fantasy song. Well, I guess it kind of is if you want to really stretch your imagination to like a sort of sexual fantasy thing. But just on the mystical sort of fantasy feel, I feel like it's a pretty cohesive thing. So if All My Life hadn't been on the album, I probably wouldn't have known how well it fit in if they just did everything that was in the vein of fantasy and, that. But I'm glad they did put it on, because I think it does fit very well. And the vocals are so powerful on that. So here, though, today we're here to talk about a little song called The Wizard. And there is a wonderful vocal effect that, I've been an audio engineer for almost 30 years. And there's a lot I know how to do, but I don't know how to do everything. And I've always wondered how this effect was done. And you'll hear it. I'll point it out when we get to it. But I'll just tell you a little bit about it now. I reached out to my friend Brian Coe, who is a fantastic audio engineer. I learned more from that guy than I've learned from anyone as far as, how to mix and take care of music properly. And so, of course, he was the first person I thought of reaching out to. And so I wrote to him, I said, do you know how they did this effect? It's interesting to me. It would be interesting if it was done today. With all the plugins, there's probably something that does this fairly efficiently. But how did they do this back in the early 70s? I wasn't aware of how that might have been done, other than some really bizarre, painstaking processes that I had thought of. But what he said was the Wizard has an analog sampling effect. You sample by pressing the on button and then turn up the time. So it's just a very simple thing that was done. And he said, Heep did it awesome. Love that album. So obviously he's a fan, but it's very interesting. It's beautifully done. It's something that was really different from things that I had heard, especially around that era. So we'll talk about that a little bit more when we hear it, or at least point it out, because I think we probably said what there is to say about it. But it was a cool choice. And especially in the location that they put it in. So I would say at this point, I think we've covered everything. I think our best bet now would be to just go ahead and head right into the song. Here is The Wizard. What a beautiful tone they're getting from the guitar. It just very lovely, very rich and full and deep, but playing something very simple. In fact, I would say that this is probably one of their simplest songs as far as technicality goes. But it's just a beautiful thing to sit and listen to.
He was the wizard of 1,000 kings, and I chanced to meet him one night wandering. tales, and he drank my wine. Me and my magic man kind of feeling fine.
You know, I kind of feel like I'm just sitting at a campfire and there's somebody strumming an acoustic guitar, and you know, I've got somebody telling me a story here of something that happened in their past, and I really like that feel. You know, I can almost feel the crackle of the fire when I really just focus in on it. But you kind of heard a little bit of the effect at the end of the first line, and then in there just a little bit, that sort of delay, the repeat of a couple of words there, and it's really strong a little bit later on, but it's a neat effect just the same, and certainly adds a little bit of depth to the song that you wouldn't normally get, because it's not something that you would pull out and do all the time, like a reverb or a delay or anything like that. It's just a very subtle effect, and it's very quiet in those first parts. So I just wanted to separate that a little bit so that you could hear in a little more and upfront detail what that effect does. Obviously, the speeding up the timing is probably what does sort of a bit of a pitch shift effect to it, where it changes it, speeds it up to more of a cartoon voice, which is going to increase the the frequency a little bit. But it's a really cool effect, and something I'm glad that wasn't overdone by any means. It's actually quite tasteful in this song. I don't know why, and I've just realized this for some reason now, in the millionth time I've listened to this song. I always picture the wizard in a blue cloak with stars on it. I don't know why, when he flat out tells me it's gold. I don't know. It's just a weird thing. But for some reason, I just picture him with a blue cloak and a hat. There's yellow stars sewn into the cloak, and he's got a beard, which wasn't even mentioned. But for some reason, that's what I picture. In any case, he's a very cool guy. Obviously, he's got some good things to say, and we're going to find out. But it's just got such a great feel to it. I mean, it's a mellow way to start an album, especially coming after Look at Yourself, which just started and ended just with blistering freight train speed and power. But yeah, this is a much more gentle way to introduce the album. We'll get to the hard stuff later. It's definitely going to be there, but it's just a nice, gentle, hey, we're going to go on a journey. We're not going to overwhelm you right off the bat. We're just going to kind of bring you in, put our arms around you, and let you get comfortable while we get started. And it's just a beautiful song to have on an album at all, let alone to be the opener. What powerful vocals. Even in a gentle song like this, they find a way to work in some beautiful harmonies, show us that this is a Uriah Heep album, and there is no question about it, but also just such beautiful layers and a really high harmony over the top, nice, thick and rich and full, but not overpowering the song, which is really amazing. That's very tricky to come in when the music is so gentle and have that level of harmony, that sort of power behind the vocals, and not have it overshadow the music. But it's a really nice balance. A lot of that goes to the credit of the engineer as well, because it would be very easy to overmix that or try and compensate and not have it sound as good because you're trying too hard to make it sound good, if that makes sense. And but the final result here in this version, in this mix, is absolutely beautiful, and it was on the LP as well, the one that I had in the '80s. Just just a gorgeous blend right there. Just beautiful. And we got a little bit of distorted guitar during that first harmony part, but then, we've got the Hammond organ coming in, just playing gently in the background. Very nice stuff. Great mix. And, it's one of those songs that it leaves you kind of comforted, because you're like, hey, you know what? Things are crazy, but we got this wizard guy and he's here and he's going to be looking after us. And it just kind of gives you a sense of peace as they trail off into the fate of the song. And I really like that. One thing that I forgot to mention about this album is who the players are. So there are 2 songs that Mark Clarke played bass on. I did get a confirmation that it was the second version of Y. So on my show on Friday, I did version A and version B. He played on version B, which came from this album and of the bonus tracks. And he also played bass on The Wizard, and everything else, as far as I know, was Gary Thane. And then, of course, on guitar, we've got Mick Box. On vocals, we've got David Byron. On keys, Ken Hensley. And on drums, we now have Lee Kerslake. So this is what some people call the classic lineup. I always think of classic as like the first thing that's there, but I think they go by what might have been more popular or what they're more familiar with becomes the classic lineup. I'm not sure how people equate that. But in any case, this is the lineup that will have a little bit of solidarity for a while. And just had Mark on those first couple of songs, and then it's this band for a bit. So we've got a journey ahead with them, but very good musicians, all of them. I think Mark was a fantastic bass player. I don't know what the story was with him, but just from what I've heard, it's kind of hard to judge on The Wizard because there wasn't much to the bass on this song. It carries nicely. It's very subdued. It plays where it needs to play and doesn't show off at all. In fact, nothing on this song really shows off, except maybe the vocals, but I think that they're done tastefully. There's no crazy drum fills. Everything is very, just eighth notes and very straightforward. Really nice playing, a good introduction for Lee Kerslake, just saying, hey, you know what, guys, I can do this. I'm here. And it just sounds like a very cohesive, everybody's working together kind of song. And I love that. I absolutely love it. The gentle nature of it. Just the warm feeling of it, just a great song from point A to point B. So, kudos Uriah Heep, and another one that I could just check the box of amazing track. And I felt that way from the very first time I heard it back, whatever year it was that I heard it. And it's just one that I've always loved. Also because I can sing it. It's like one of the few songs I can still sing, although not right now. So I won't turn you off to the show by doing any vocals myself. There's no need for anybody to put up with that. But I hope that you enjoyed the song. I hope you liked my review of it. There's some really wonderful things, as basic and simple as it seems. It does have a couple of layers to it and a couple of very nice surprises, especially in the way of the vocals. Musically, it's just a nice little journey. You're in the canoe and you're just letting the water take you where it does. And I love that about their more gentle songs like that. So thank you guys for joining me for another episode of Uriah Heep, the Magicians podcast. Magician, singular magician, because that's how the magician's birthday was. Some people think it should be plural, apparently. But no, it's singular because the magician's birthday referred to one magician that was having a birthday and not all magicians or multiple magicians. So the magician's birthday. But I appreciate you guys joining me on the Magicians podcast. And I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow, where we'll be discussing another song from the famous album Demons and Wizards. Cheers, guys. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Uriah Heep, the Magicians Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, please consider going over to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast outlet, leaving a rating or a review. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are notified when new episodes are available. Please be sure to share this podcast with your fellow Uriah Heep enthusiasts and anyone who you think would like Uriah Heep, which should be everyone. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to contribute to the Patreon account. And if you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can also pay through the PayPal link on the website listed in the show links below. I would also like to thank Uriah Heep for their very generous support of the show, and thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy days!